Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rich Sports Talk. It's been a little while. The New York Jets have had a different approach to free agency than a lot of us are used to, but that's why I'm here. We are here to break down all the latest and greatest with the New York Jets, and we have a lot to talk about on today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us here today. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest content. Also, check out our community page in the chat. On the community page, I asked you to give the New York Jets a grade in free agency so far. And in the chat here in the live stream, I've given you an option to basically click right up there. Are you happy with what the Jets are doing? You can click yes or you can click no. And as always, super chats to jump to the front of the line if you'd like to make a donation. And of course, if we hit our goal today, we will be doing a special Friday night show. Again, if we hit our goal, we will get a Friday show. So we came on after day one of free agency. I did promise you I'd come up on day two, but unfortunately, the window I had, to be completely transparent, I didn't have, I thought, enough to go on with one free agency. But the Jets have had a little bit of movement, but more importantly, we have gotten their strategy. And look, the Jets right now, they are bargain hunting. They are looking for deals everywhere. They are looking to see what they can get. And here's the thing with this. I think there's a lot of ways to look at free agency. Now, when I look at social media, I think it's pretty clear that the majority of this fan base is incredibly frustrated. Why haven't they added a D tackle yet? Why haven't they added a wide receiver? Why didn't they add any of the big names? Why didn't they go and spend in receiver? The thing with free agency, which I think people have to understand, is there are different ways to approach it. And I think what the Jets are doing is very smart, both in the current and in the future. There's a lot to dive into. And again, I will get to all your comments and we will get to the players in a set. But I do want to say, I think it is crucial to view how the New York Jets are approaching this free agency. It is clear that they have a goal. They have an idea of what they are looking for. They are looking for short-term investments on young players with potential. They're looking at guys that they feel might have a high ceiling. They're taking basically risks on these guys. And ultimately, they want to see, do they have anything? Is there talent there? Is there something under the surface that the Jets can utilize? Now, you look at a lot of these signings, again, nothing breaking the bank, no major contracts. But then again, the Jets are overpaying in free agency, which is a trap this team has fallen into over the past 10 years. And look, this is a team we've known that likes to, quote, win the offseason awards. This is a team that loves to win the offseason. But the problem is winning the offseason didn't translate into winning in the regular season. So my thoughts on how Darren Muji and how Aaron Glenn and how this organization is approaching free agency is, I wouldn't say that I'm thrilled with it, but I understand logically what they are doing. Now, granted, I would still like to see them add a receiver, add a defensive tackle. My question is, are they going to add that a different way, though? Are they going to look at the trade market potentially to address those needs? The thing with this free agency market, and one of the things that I think is getting misconstrued about free agency is free agency, and I know I'm going to sound like the old guy sitting on the front porch and saying what life used to be like, but NFL free agency has dramatically changed. When you look at teams now, they don't let great players get to free agency usually. They keep their young players, whether they re-sign them early, whether they franchise tag them. It is very rare for teams to let really quality free agents go. And a lot of these guys that do hit the market have major questions. I mean, Justin Fields hit the market because there's questions about him. Yes, he was nice as a fill-in, but can he be a full-time starter? Yes, he has upside, but the Steelers are a team that's really looking to win now and not looking on betting on someone's upside. The Jets are a team that was willing to do that. All the guys that you mentioned have some sort of baggage. There isn't a free agent where you're like, that is a slam dunk free agent. And even this class, the top free agents in this class got massively paid. But the problem when you do that is when you pay B players A money and they don't perform like A players, it can hurt your team. And the big thing is you want to buy low and hope you hit. The Jets did that with DJ Reed a couple of years ago. I thought they bought low on DJ Reed and they were rewarded for it. Now, granted, the Jets haven't really done long-term deals with these guys, but they are betting on the upside. They are betting on the ceiling. And for me, and for a lot of Jet fans, I do think that there is a bit of frustration. And I understand it when you see your team has needs. We know this wide receiver room needs to be improved. We know the right tackle is a point of issue. We know the tight end room is a point of issue. We understand the defensive tackle room and the defensive line needs vast improvement. But overall, when I look at what the Jets have done, I say, okay, am I blown away with what they've done? No. Am I disappointed that they didn't add a receiver? I get it, but for other reasons, I understand why they didn't get receivers. I understand why Palmer chose to go play in Buffalo with a MVP candidate at quarterback and also go there because they're probably going to be one of the top 3 teams in the AFC next year. I understand why Slayton went back to the Giants. I guess it was familiarity because that's the only reason I could really come up with, to be honest with you. But I look at the tight end market. Yes, Tyler Conklin's still out there. I think if you wait it out, maybe he could fall to you. The Jets go out and they bet on a young safety. There are still some safeties out there. I know the defensive tackle market is frustrating, but the Jets have made it clear, and I think the ultimate sign of this was the C.J. Mosley cut. Now, C.J. Mosley has been designated as a post-June 1st cut. The Jets are allowed to. It's going to be Aaron Rodgers, and it's going to be C.J. Mosley. One thing with Aaron Rodgers that to me personally is a little frustrating is if this is the approach this offseason, personally, I would have taken the whole lump sum this year. But again, I think what the Jets are projecting are they're going to have less dead money on the cap as opposed to this year, next year. And the way the salary cap is going up about $20 million every year, they feel it's pretty much going to cover itself next year. And that's the other thing with free agency. The cap going up every single year so substantially allows teams to keep great players. I mean, even the guys the Jets lost all had some issues. And part of the reason I think the Jets are shopping the way they are is because they are having an eye on 2026. Now, granted, with comp picks, you have to see how they pay out. And again, it's if you sign basically a comp pick of similar value or a free agency of a similar value or pay structure, your comp pick cancels out. Now, with the Jets, the big one's probably going to be Hassan Reddick, which is projecting to be around a 4th round pick. Morgan Moses, probably a 6th or 7th round pick. So I think what the Jets are looking, and again, comp picks isn't like you're getting a 2nd or high 3rd rounder. But part of me thinks that the Jets, especially not having the 3rd rounder from the Hassan Reddick trade, are basically trying to get assets for next year when they might have to go and get a quarterback. And I think that that is a smart long-term outlook. Now, granted, there are a lot of questions with the free agency. So before I get to the free agents, I want to first talk about C.J. Mosley, who I think had an incredible career with the Jets. I know there was a lot of ups and downs, but he was an incredible defensive leader and will be missed. But look, this to me was the right move. We don't know if CJ is going to play again, especially with the neck injury at 33. But I think what the Jets did is allow him to go. If he does want to play maybe 1 or 2 more years, maybe go and latch on with a competitor. The big thing I look with Mosley too is the Jets made a major investment in Jamien Sherwood. They might have to do it in Quincy Williams. Now, again, they're not getting a ton of cap relief from CJ Mosley, but they are officially getting that off the books. But they're telling you they're looking at restarting this thing. And a lot of fans, and I get it, don't want to hear the dreaded rebuild. But they are trying to build around a young mid-20 core, a young, hungry team, a fast team, and a team that has something to prove. Because the guys the Jets have brought in are at that point in their career where they're either going to make it or they're not. There are some very intriguing players that they have brought in. And I do think that there's a lot to dissect from what they brought in. Now, I was on Twitter about one of these moves, and I will get into in a sec, but let's go over some of the big moves that the Jets have brought in. The most recent one, and again, guys, If you want to jump to the front of the line, use that super chat feature. And if you do see any breaking news, I'm doing my best to see if anything breaks because, of course, things seem to break during our show. So luckily, hopefully, the Jets will be able to live on, although apparently Joe Flacco is visiting, former Jet, is visiting the, you know, is visiting the New York Giants today. So that is very good. So the Jets have made a bit of a move. They have just signed, according to Dennis Wazik Jr., it looks like the Jets are signing former Bears defensive tackle Byron Cowart to add to the D-line. A fifth-round pick for the Patriots. Has also had stints with the Colts Chiefs. Had a career best 2.5 sacks last year with the Bears, which makes sense. It looks like the Jets, it's the type of player, young player, starting to maybe come into his own, maybe ascending a little bit. Now, again, I'm not necessarily believing that the Jets are going to make him the starting D tackle, but it adds another young body. It adds someone to compete with, like a Leonard Taylor for that rotational defensive tackle role. But overall, like, I think the Jets are telling you exactly what they're thinking, how they're trying to build this team. But let's go through some of the key adds and what the roles they have. Most recent was Stone Smart. Again, big body tight end, a 1-year contract. Basically was on waivers from the Chargers. Jets signed him. Developmental player, 31 career receptions, 200 yards and a touchdown. The analytics are very high on him. He had a very high catch percentage last year. The big thing with Smart that you have to also take in mind is, even though he's 26, he's only played the position for 3 years. The story behind Smart is this wasn't a guy who came out as a tight end. He made the transition to the NFL basically because he was a quarterback wide receiver, but with the body type he has at that 6'4" frame, 226 pounds, incredible speed, topped over 20 miles an hour last year on Next Gen Stats. Receiving tight end, developing to be a blocker, 13 passes in a 4-game stretch down the stretch. I think he's an interesting project. And look, I think when you look at him, I think he's going to compete for that third tight end role. You have guys like Zach Kuhn still on the roster. Again, it's not going to kill you if you cut him. Fast player, can stretch the field a little bit. Intriguing player who I think is a guy who I'm very interested to see. You have Jamin Davis, who technically is a re-sign for the Jets because they brought him in off of the waivers last year from the Vikings. Didn't really play with the Jets. 26 years old. Good traits with him. You're looking for a linebacker depth. And look, the Jets have done this before with Quincy. I mean, linebacker, sometimes it's the right fit, the right system. Maybe he's a fit in this system. I'm not saying a starter, but a nice role player. One of the big signings to me was Josh Myers. So a couple of things. Former Green Bay Packer. You look at him, and there has been a wild debate, and we'll get into that, and I would love to hear from you guys. So a little bit of history. Josh Myers was the center of Ohio State. Who was his quarterback? That would be the new Jets quarterback, Justin Fields. However, it seems like he's going to be more of Tippmann's backup because you look at Wes Schweitzer, free agent, older, has had injury issues, and you look at the contract. If they were looking at him to be a starter, I think he would have been more than $3.5 million. So he has been a 56-game starter for the Packers, but it allows versatility. So if the right tackle position doesn't work out, maybe you can slide AVT over there. Maybe this regime feels AVT. And I mentioned it a couple weeks ago that maybe this new regime feels Tippmann's a better guard than center. Maybe they feel AVT's a better tackle than guard. But the big news is it's a high-end backup that gives you flexibility on the interior. And it's like starting pitching in baseball. You're not gonna have the same starting 5 offensive line. You need depth. And this is a very good one. A guy that can start potentially. Now, again, 20 out of 33 centers in terms of pass block win rate. But look, he's a proven pro, starts a lot of games, played half a season with a torn pectoral. So this is a guy who maybe if he has to start, you can live with and allows the Jets some versatility on the offensive line. But it is funny because now you're seeing the AVT to right tackle. I'm okay with moving AVT to right tackle, but I still would like the Jets to address the right tackle position more. I'll get to the right tackle. Isaiah Oliver is probably my favorite defensive player. Now, I played all over the secondary last year. He can play corner, nickel, and dime. 8 interceptions in his career, 578 snaps last year. I mean, he's 24 years old, durable player. The big thing, too, is it's like Jackson was such a mess last year, especially with the defensive staff. A part of you wonders how much of that really impacted his game, and maybe the Jets see an incredible value here for a guy that's got still a lot of tread on the tires and a lot of upside in front of him. Now, the intriguing signing probably is Chukwuma Okorafor from the New England Patriots. So this is a tale of two players. Now, if we look at what he was before the Patriots, he was a longtime starter at tackle. Probably, and I don't think he's going to be the starting right tackle, but he's probably going to be the starting swing tackle or right tackle. I mean, it's a easy contract, 27 years old, 60 career starts. And look, if you had to ask me, I feel more comfortable with him as a backup than Max Mitchell and Carter Warren, who at times haven't looked like NFL players. And maybe this is someone they're bringing in for competition for those two. But the thing was with Okorafor's season with the Patriots, it was interesting. So he was the opening day starter at left tackle. Now, keep in mind, he was a right tackle his full career. He was benched after 12 plays. When they benched, then he benched himself, walked off the team. So again, there are some red flags. The one thing you hope, maybe this is someone that hates the Patriots as much as we do. But it's also like Jacksonville. It's one of those things like, yes, that is concerning with the player. But at the same time, I'm still a little bit like giving him a shot. Again, it's an easy reception. Look, Cisco, I think, was a good deal from the Jaguars. Rashad Weaver is an intriguing player. He's basically a depth piece on the defensive line. Returning from, fourth round pick in 2021, only 5.5 sacks in 36 career games. I mean, he's a low-risk reclamation project. To me, he's kind of what Takk McKinley was for this team last year. He's a guy that has upside. You want to take a swing on him. Maybe you can get him out of him. And I think a lot of us were hoping Takk McKinley could be a really good situational pass rusher for this team. And unfortunately, that did not happen. So again, we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest Jets signings. Again, just refreshing X. But again, the most recent one is that they've signed Byron Cowart off the transaction wire from the Bears. Again, 2.5 sacks with the Bears last year. Another guy they're bringing in, young defensive tackle, someone that compete and bring it to the room. But it is interesting, too, because the Jets are only allowed 2 post-June 1st releases, which means Allen Lazard is not going to be a June 1st cut, or he won't be. He could still be cut after June 1st, but he can't be a designated cut. So I think what the Jets are kind of hoping is that basically, I think this is what the Jets are kind of hoping for Allen Lazard. Now, again, I mean, might be outlined on this, but here's my thoughts. We all know the history between Aaron Rodgers and Allen Lazard. They're buddies. He's the one that brought him to New York. He made sure that he got paid. I kind of have this feeling. Now, again, I don't know how much leverage the Jets will have, but maybe in the Jets' head, they're hoping that the Steelers or Giants, whoever ends up with him, Aaron Rodgers, they'll want that he'll request Allen Lazard to be a depth piece in that offense, and the Jets can then utilize that as a trade piece. Now, again, I don't think you're getting much. You might get like a 6th or 7th round pick. I think that the Jets might even take a swing, kind of like they're doing. Maybe there's a guy on their rosters, on the Giants roster, that they don't feel has really performed. I mean, the Steelers have a ton of depth at wide receiver. They've just added DK Metcalf. Maybe there's someone on their depth chart right now that maybe you could see uh, potentially becoming a trade piece. I think the Giants are interesting as well. Maybe there's someone on their roster that the Jets really like that's overlooked. Again, like you're looking and you're seeing certain players that are valued. And one of the interesting things, especially about Stone, that I thought of when the Jets made that move today was who would have saw him twice last year? Oh, that's right. There would have been Darren Muji with the Denver Broncos. So I do think there's a lot of ties. If there's one disappointment I feel with the Jets this offseason, I think a lot of people are going to bring this criticism. Well, why didn't the Lion players really come in spades like Tim Patrick, or why didn't they come and follow Aaron Glenn to the Jets? And I think there's a very simple and a very logical reason. As of course, where my computer is, my apologies if it's not an earthquake. I promise it's just the spot where my computer is just wobbling a little bit today. I gotta get that fixed. But it does seem to me like if you're one of those Lions players like Tim Patrick, why are you going to the Jets where they're hoping to be a playoff team, where the Lions are likely going to be competing for a Super Bowl next year? So like that to me is the biggest reason. And you can't fault the players for not wanting to leave a team that's going to be one of the top 5 teams in the National Football League next year. But I mean, one of the things you could look at too is like maybe there's someone on the Giants roster that is overlooked. Like, maybe they're looking at like the defensive tackle room where the Giants have some depth. Like maybe they look at like a Casey Rogers or a Corey Durden, and maybe there's someone that they can swap Allen Lazard with. I mean, that's my thought on why Allen Lazard hasn't been fully cut yet. I mean, it also doesn't help the Jets don't really have any wide receiver depth at this point. But again, let's now get to some of your comments. I know you guys have been waiting patiently. Again, you can check out the poll in the comment section right over there. And you can also check out the poll on Rich Sports Talk's community page. Again, we update this, get your feedback, give you ideas for future videos. And again, let's check out that poll right now in the community page. So right now, I asked you a very simple question. What grade would you give? Would you give this free agency an A, a B, a C/D, or an F? A lot of you are very optimistic with a B. So again, I think the chat has some realistic expectations. Again, super chat to jump to the front of the line, make a donation for the page, and also to make sure that you're heard. So let's get into your comment section right now. As again, let's see what you guys have been asking while I've been talking about my reaction to the free agency. BK, have it your way. BK, I think the team recognizes they can't fill all their needs this offseason. They're going to prioritize certain positions and go for these kinds of low-risk reward contracts and keep those who stick. I think that's a great way to look at it. The hard part, though, is I would have liked them to add a receiver. Now, the big X factor, and there's certain X factors on every team. I am very curious how this team views Malachi Corley. Because I know how a lot of Jet fans, how we feel about Malachi Corley. I think we are pretty down on Malachi Corley in that he maybe isn't a great fit. But maybe they feel that he's a better fit. Like maybe they feel they can get a lot out of him, or at least want to give him at least a fair shake next year before they make any dramatic wide receiver moves. Now, I have seen on the wide receiver front, like Chris Olave. The problem with him is he has the concussion issues. Like Tua, you wonder if he gets another one. Is that going to be it for his career? So again, I think the Jets are going to take either low risk or guys that they could maybe potentially see as being long-term fits for the team, as opposed to just taking a shot on guys that you cross your fingers and hope can be here long-term. I'm concerned, but I believe we can finally draft well, so it depends how the draft goes. I'm confident going into the season. And I'm very curious now at the 7th pick, because the Jets have holes. Maybe they view this draft as more of a fill holes draft. So again, I know everyone's screaming Tyler Warren at 7. But maybe what the Jets, and again, they're acquiring the assets for 2026, I think, through the comp picks. Maybe what the Jets are doing smartly is looking at it and going, hopefully we can get assets for the 2026 draft. But if we can't, maybe they can trade back and get some more picks in this draft. Maybe they look at the middle of the first round and say maybe it's worth it for us to get another second round pick. Maybe that's how they're going to look to fill the holes, because now all of a sudden with the quarterback situation, they aren't screaming and running to go and basically get a quarterback at number 7. I do think they're going to draft a quarterback eventually, probably on day 2, very early day 3. But at least now this gives them some leeway. So maybe they trade back, get an extra pick, use it on maybe a tackle in the first round, early second round, you get tight end. Maybe they're looking at some combination of tight end, tackle, defensive tackle, and quarterback within their first 4 picks. And who knows, maybe wide receiver. I do think this team's going to play a lot of 12 personnel. They're going to put a lot of big bodies on the field. Like, I don't think this is going to be a team that's going to line up with 3 receivers all the time. So I do think that's very important. I also like, too, Rico brings up a good point with the O-line. They brought up young guys who have experience and have played a lot and have been very durable. Now, the big thing is, have they been great? No, because there's a reason they're out there. But I do feel a lot more comfortable, like, say, if the Jets draft a right tackle, or if they draft a tackle and during the season Joe Tippmann has to miss 3 or 4 weeks, or AVT gets nicked up, or basically one of the tackles gets injured. Like, I look at the backups now and I feel a lot better going to those backups than maybe a Max Mitchell. Now you look at the backup, instead of going to Schweitzer, you go to a young center. I mean, these are possibilities. Who knows? Like, think of, you give yourselves options. Like, here's a crazy scenario I'll play out for you. A scenario could be this: AVT, who, again, knocking on that wood, has had 2 season-ending injuries. Maybe there's a world where he misses significant time and they move Joe Tippmann to right guard, and Joe Tippmann plays like an all-pro guard. And basically the Jets looking and go, well, we had a good starting center. Tippmann's a guard. AVT is going to be 27, 28, has a significant injury history. We're not giving him a new contract. So the big thing is you have to give yourself options. And what the Jets in free agency have done is give themselves options. They've given themselves the option where they don't have to be desperate for a quarterback in the draft, which I think is absolutely huge. They've given themselves leeway where they don't have to be completely desperate in this draft early. I that to me is incredibly valuable. They've gotten some really good offensive line depth, which I think is smart. You're not relying on rookie backups potentially, which I think is very smart. And look, this might be a year where it might be frustrating because maybe there's going to be a lack of playmakers. But if the Jets figure out the offensive line, have a great offensive line, and they figure out a lot of the other positions, it's a lot easier to find great playmakers than find great tackles. It's a lot easier to find great receivers than find great guards or great centers. I mean, think about all the wide receiver trades. And that's one thing I would keep an eye on. I think you're going to see a trade at least once this offseason, either for like a defensive tackle or for a wide receiver. Now, what kind of wide receiver? Would it be disgruntled? Will it be an old veteran? I'm not sure, but I do think that the Jets are going to explore that market. I don't think they're just going to put all their eggs in the draft basket, but who knows? I do like how they are looking for young guys with upside. And look, I get it. There was a lot of intriguing D tackles, and I'll be the first to admit that's one position I've kind of been screaming about. But then, Kevin, on the other hand, this is one of the deepest defensive tackle drafts in a long time. And you think maybe the Jets are looking at it that way. They're saying, look, we're not going to spend significantly in free agency on D tackles when there's a lot we really like in this draft. But the Jets now have fluidity. If they want to move AVT to right tackle, they can move him to right tackle. If they want to move basically Joe Tippmann to center, they can. There's a lot of different scenarios and options that this team has now with some of these moves. And that's the big thing. They have a good free safety and a ball hawk who God knows when's the last time we had a ball hawk in the safety and in the secondary. I mean, a guy that has 8 career interceptions by the age of 24 is doing something right. Now, the Stevens signing, I'm really curious about because that would be a question if I was in the press conference, I would ask, like, is he going to be the number 2 corner next to Sauce? Is he going to move to safety? Are they going to kind of play it by ear and see where he fits best because he can play both positions? That is definitely something I would definitely keep an eye on as this offseason progresses. But again, the latest news, Byron Cowart, still now in New York Giants. I'm trying to remember if he's the son of the former defense tackle Cowart from back in the day. I'll have to look a little bit deeper into that. But another guy, 2.5 sacks, mid-round pick. I think he probably won't be a starter, but probably is in that Leonard Taylor third defensive tackle, give you someone to compete with throughout the defensive room. And look, so he's under 30. He's 28, Cowart, 300 pounds, finally gets some beat, 26 tackles, 2.5 sacks last year. Surprisingly graded in the middle of the pack, according to PFF, 48 out of 108 D tackles. Didn't play in 2023. Was on practice squads this year. He's bounced around the league a little bit, but again, just depth, another body to get into free agency. Again, super chat to jump to the front of the line. Let's see what else we have. I would have liked Darnell Mooney with Justin Fields. I mean, that could have been definitely a possibility as well. Do you believe Michael Carter's role changes? He used to play. No, Rico. They signed him as the top. At the time, they gave him the top slot corner position. He was not healthy last year. When he's healthy, he's the best slot corner. You can count him on top slot corners in the league. He's not moving anywhere. I think he'll be fine where he is. Let's see. Jets signed Stone today, but he played more like a wide receiver than a tight end. His blocking grades report. Again, this is a guy that's also making a transition, and who knows, maybe they'll utilize him. Just because you're a tight end doesn't mean you line up at tight end. Like, you look at the Jets with Dustin Keller, I think is a great example. Dustin Keller was one of these tight ends that reminds me a little bit of Stone, maybe a bit like light in terms of the weight, but very fast. This could be a guy that maybe, I'm not saying they line him up as an X receiver or a wide receiver, but he's someone that maybe you don't have as an inline blocker all the time. You put him on the outside and he acts like another receiver. And also, maybe that gives him more favorable matchups. He struggles blocking against some of these defensive ends and outside linebackers, but maybe if you put him on the outside, he becomes a better blocker in terms of a wide receiver on a corner. Because again, 6'4" at that 238 pounds, it's a better matchup and easier for him to get downhill on like an undersized corner. So that could be a way that they utilize him as well. Again, trying to catch up. But again, if you want to guarantee that your chat is read, use the super chat feature, use the sticker feature, and of course, use the poll feature in here as well if you want to jump to the front of the line. Okay. Stevens was paid starter money, so imagine he will have the first shot being corner 2. He was paid starter money. Getting a little bit rich for my blood. I'm just curious if he's going to be because he played a lot of safety as well. Like, I mean, that's still even some safety money. So he definitely have the personnel. Look, I do think they have playmakers. It's just not on the outside. I think they're going to add a playmaker at tight end. They still have Garrett Wilson. They still have Breece Hall. They still have Braylon Allen. They have Justin Fields, who basically is a weapon. I think the Jets are going to be a very different team. The Jets are going to be an incredibly run-heavy team. They're going to run the ball, go off of play action, and then run the ball again. So if you're someone that wants the Jets to chuck it all over the yard, if you're a team that you want the Jets to basically throw it 55 times a game, you're going to be disappointed because it's going to be a lot of ground and pound until they get more playmakers on the outside. And look, the other thing too is just they might not start the season with the number 2 receiver, but you can add receivers at the trade deadline. Every year we see receivers moved. Like, a scenario could be maybe the Jets, hey, we're not sure how far we're going to go this year, but here's a scenario. What if the Jets at the trade deadline are 4-3 or 5-2? Justin Fields is playing very well, very comfortable in this offense. And maybe the Saints say, you know what, we'll put Chris Olave on the block for a fifth or sixth, or a veteran receiver is out there for a fifth or sixth. Heck, the Jets added Devontae Adams at the trade deadline. Of course, not trying to add PTSD for everyone out there. So if I gave you PTSD flashbacks, my apologies. But it's, to me, you can find a veteran receiver at almost any time of the year if you're willing to meet the price. It's hard to find other pieces as well. And the other thing, too, is it's also very much one thing you also have to look at, too. You have to look at, let me just get my senses here. Yeah, they already have some Pro Bowlers, but again, you need a great quarterback, and I don't think the Jets necessarily have that. Rico the Pup, would you sign Kyle Juszczyk? I would be into it. I, again, would be open to it. I think he brings incredible value, but again, also an older player. So I would sign if the price is right. The other thing, too, is you got to also wonder, too, at a lot of these good veterans, do they want to come to the Jets? Because here's the truth. The Jets are a team that has the longest playoff drought, and they don't have a track record. At this point in Juszczyk's career, he might be saying, look, I got 1 or 2 years. Why would I waste one with the Jets? Like, he might be thinking of this. I mean, he's been to the Super Bowl. He might be thinking to himself, I really want to win that ring. Maybe Kansas City is a fit. Maybe Buffalo is a fit. So if he's open to coming to the Jets, absolutely, Rico. I'm just not sure. And look, I do kind of think it is more of a retool. This is still a very talented team. There's still a lot of talented players on this roster. The big question is going to be the quarterback position, how they address that in the draft, and what they do in the draft. The other thing I would also look for, too, is certain teams, like if they draft a good young receiver in the draft, might cut a veteran receiver to save cap money. So maybe they get great value at the wide receiver position. Maybe a team gets Ted McMillan when they weren't expected it, and then they cut a veteran receiver that the Jets could scoop up. Let's see. Definitely a debate in the chat right now if this is a rebuilding team or not. But again, I do think that there are good enough pieces. Like, I think this is a team that can compete. And Aaron Glenn's telling you this is a team that can compete. I think there are certain levels in the NFL. Do I think the Jets are a Super Bowl contender? No. Do I realistically think the way they are currently constructed, borrowing something unique or something different, that the New York Jets could compete for a Super Bowl? No. But do I think that the New York Jets, if they play well and they have the right head coach, if they go out there, they can compete for a playoff spot, maybe make a run in the playoffs? Sure. So I think it's all about how you're looking at this Jet team. If this Jet team can run the ball like we think they're capable of, if they can play great defense like we think they're capable of, they're going to be in games. They'll have the chance to win. And even last year, with all the horrendous coaching they had last year, and again, they had a better quarterback last year, they lost games because of bad coaching and bad special teams and bad execution. If they clean up on the execution and they're able to be in these games and they're able to execute down the stretch, they can have a chance to make the playoffs. Retool, because everyone's is scared to say the word rebuild. That's what this is new. Everyone coming back to build an offensive line, defensive line. Look, the thing I would also say about this, Matthias, and I know people hate the word rebuild. It's a dirty word. I get it. Here's the way I look at the Jets. And I understand that they are bargain hunting. I understand that they are not looking to add like the cream of the crop of free agency, which again isn't exactly cream. It's more just regular milk. I would say that when I look at this Jet team, they are a team that is trying to basically build it out, build it the right way. And I get it. This is a bad free agency class. I would rather have this team not overdo it in a bad free agent class than go out and spend stupid money when they have dead cap all over the place. The thing with the Jets, and I know the playoff drought is infuriating. It infuriates me to hear it all the time. I completely understand where all of you are coming from and the frustration and the pain it causes you. But the thing is, I would rather maybe take another mulligan and miss the playoffs another year if this is built the right way and this team competes every single year. I don't want Maccagnan going all in and spending like a drunken sailor so this team had a shot to compete in 2015, but built it in a way where that was it. And they basically fell off the earth and have fallen into the abyss since. I would rather have this team be built the right way instead of the instant coffee or the quick fixes out there. Because I think too many times the Jets get ahead of themselves. You have the unbelievable draft in 2022. You have a young quarterback in Zach Wilson who you know is a bust. So what do? You swing for the fences and you hope Aaron Rodgers can save this franchise. And even at the time, I still think that was the right move. It didn't work. Now you have to pay the piper. Now is the time where the Jets, and unfortunately us as the fans, have to take the medicine and realize, look, this team has to be built the right way. This team has to rechange the culture where guys are going to want to not only stay here, but want to come here. You want great free agents in the future, make the Jets a competitive team so great free agents or great veteran players will come here on short-term contracts or be fill-in pieces, because that is how you get great free agents. It's you either overpay them drunkenly or you create a team where it's like, yeah, you know what? I'll take a pay cut. Yeah, if it's close, Josh Palmer, yeah, the Giants have good money, but I want to play with Josh Allen in a team that could potentially play in the Super Bowl. Like, those are the things right now, because let's be honest, the Jets, as much as I think the culture is changing, they're not a desirable place to come. Like, if you were you look at the guys, these guys coming here are hoping that they can come here, ball out, and get a new contract or prove themselves. Cisco, if he has a great year at the Jets, you don't think he's either going to look to get a good contract from the Jets at 25 years old or hit free agency? Like, the guys that are coming to the Jets are looking for an opportunity to play and reestablish their careers. These are not guys who are well established who are coming to the Jets and saying, I want to come to the Jets right now. And like, the other big thing too is we talked about earlier, people are like, well, why aren't the Lions players coming? It's because they're playing on a team that could go win the Super Bowl potentially this year. That's why they're not leaving. That's why they're sticking around on one-year contracts. So again, I think the Jets, with all the things that are going on with this franchise and the history that they've gone through, they're doing the right thing. I think this team can win 9 games and be in the hunt. If everything goes right, I think 10 wins could be on the table. Again, it's hard to predict because, again, as much as I want to be optimistic, I got to see a couple games with this team, just seeing how the scheme fits, how Jamie Sherwood and Quincy fit in this new defense, how Jermaine fits in this new defense. Like, it's going to be a different defense, how they fit in this new defense. How's this new offense work? Does Brees actually get 20 touches in a game? I mean, God forbid, that would be a great thing. I think in a weird way, Rico, it makes it more likely because I feel like Milroe's going to be there on day 2. The question is he going to be able to fall to the 3rd round? If the Jets really, really love him, maybe they take him in round 2. Now, again, with the pick they have at 75 now, that also gives them some leeway too. Like, for example, if Milroe's sitting there at like 63, 64, maybe then the Jets trade up. I think he is a guy who you also now have a structure where Justin Fields is going to be this team start for at least next season. You have Tyrod Taylor as an excellent backup. It basically allows you to stash him as your 3rd quarterback and not put pressure on him to play. So I think he could definitely be in play because I don't think the teams that are going to draft him are going to want to sit him a full year, which I think he really needs. And again, it might fit this offense. We got to see this offense eventually intact. But I was kind of under the impression, again, maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe they'll go this direction. But seeing what they did in Detroit, I thought they were going to look for more of a traditional passer that was highly accurate, quick release, get the ball out quick. So I'm like, maybe they'll look at Mike White to be a backup to Tyrod, or maybe they'll look like as a Hendon Hooker to bring in him and compete. But they've gone with a hyper athletic quarterback. Maybe they're going to look at Jalen Milroe and say, we want a hyper athletic quarterback in this system. So maybe that will be someone that they will definitely keep an eye on. So let's also see. Yeah, Brian Coward did sign. I did see that. Mentioned that, Matthias. I can see this team winning 6 to 8 games because it's 2026 when the Jets can make the real jump. Look, I think the real jump, I agree, that could be 2026. A lot of it's also how these games are played. Are they close? Are they competitive? And I know we hate the word competitive in these games, but like there were games like the Adam Gase Jets, they weren't competitive. Robert Saleh, the Jets, when they would lose, it wasn't just, they lost by 3 points. It was a lot of times they got their teeth kicked in. And you're like, how is this the same team that we saw last week, win by 10, and they don't even show up this week, or they don't show up until the third quarter? Yes, Steve, I think they are in the conversation for a wild card. I do think that's possible. Now, again, a lot of things have to go right. They got to be healthy. The hard part, too, with predictions is I don't know what this team is going to look like. To me, the biggest thing for this team is going to be the draft, because they are basically going to make a massive investment through the NFL draft. I think the biggest thing now is they filled a lot of holes, so they won't be completely desperate when it comes to the draft. But I also think that they are looking at guys with upside. Now, again, I'm a little surprised, like Jedrick Wills, they didn't bring in. I'm guessing they're a little scared by the injury history. But I do think that you look at a lot of the guys they are bringing in, you look at this young team. I mean, think about this. One of the oldest players on this team right now is Quincy. He's 28, going to be 29. Think about this. Quinnen's 27, Jermaine 26, Justin Fields 26, Will McDonald 25, Sauce and Garrett are 24, Brees is 23, Olu's 22, and Braylon Allen's 21. I mean, congratulations to Braylon Allen. He can now have, a beer. So, look, I get the frustration from a lot of Jet fans too, because I know the current tight end rooms like Jeremy Ruckert, Andrew Beck, Tony Stone Smart, Zach Kuhns, Neil Johnson. I do think they're going to add more bodies. The question is how they're going to add it. I do think they're going to add pieces, but I'm curious how they do it. Is it strictly through the draft? Is it through creative trades? I mean, there's also other parts of this offseason as well, because you have to look at it and basically this is the main free agency period. Then you're going to have a period after the draft where we'll see some veterans cut. And then June 1st, we'll see another flurry of activity with other people cut. So I'm curious to see how this team will address certain positions. I would like to see them add a receiver. I feel now you're going to see them they're going to add a receiver and tight end in the draft. The question is how many. The question is when. Do they add tackle early? I mean, I would also say do not be surprised if the Jets take a tackle first. Do not be surprised. I feel like if you ask me today, if I had to go positions I feel the Jets are looking at in the first round, I would say tackle and tight end are 1A and 1B, and then there's a gap to defensive tackle and wide receiver. Because I think this team wants to get a dynamic player. I think they want to improve the run game. You can obviously you do that with the tackle, but if you get a great tight end, they can also improve the run game. But the big thing I also look at too is and this is why I'm a little off the Tyler Warren trade. Again, I do think he's a top 10 player in this draft. The hard part I have with is I look at this draft. You have 2 or 3 really good tackles like every draft, and then there's a significant drop off. I look at the wide receivers. I think after the top 2 or 3, there's a significant drop off. I think there's a lot of really good defensive tackles in this draft. I think there's a bit of a drop off after Mason Graham, but there's a lot of great tight ends. There's a lot of really talented tight ends, a lot of talented defensive tackles, which makes me look at the Jets picks and I go, doesn't make sense. Like I could see a world where the Jets go offensive tackle round 1 and take the best remaining defensive tackle round 2, and then they use that third pick to either wait for a tight end or trade back into round 2 to grab a tight end. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets go all beef this draft, especially early, and go tackle, defensive tackle, and tight end with the top 3 picks. Again, it's kind of an ugly draft. It's getting the bruisers in there, but I do think that that is a possibility that could easily happen. But the free agency period and the off season is just beginning. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down there. See it right there? Click it so you don't miss any of our latest content here on Rich Sports Talk. We will have plenty more throughout the off season, breaking the biggest off season stories, and of course, giving you full draft analysis. Now, again, not going to be a mock draft coming this Monday, but we will have our first official mock draft Monday, our first full 7-round mock draft coming the following Monday. Yes, the full 7-rounders are back and better than ever. So make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any of that. But until next time, thank you all for joining us. I look forward to seeing you soon. I'm your host, Nolan Rich, and this is Rich Sports Talk.